All right, it is 4:15. Welcome to the Human Resources Committee meeting on Monday, July 9th, 2018. We'll kick it off with the staffing report.
Okay, what you're going to see on the staffing report, still a number of certified extensions. Those are extended school years, people doing their normal jobs through the summer months. And as opposed to on the other side on page 3, you'll see certified summer school. These are summer school appointments with a summer school rate. So there's a little bit of difference there. Typically the extended school years, for the most part, stand either to curriculum or to special services.
Thank you. We'll move on to action items. I understand that item A will be visiting on the 23rd of July.
Just a correction on that. We're going to pull that from this month and put it in August board. They are not prepared to vote until the 23rd of July.
I see.
Yep.
August, you mean?
Correct. Oh, I'm sorry, 23rd of August, yeah. Excellent. They're going to vote. Well, they're going to vote on the 23rd of July, which means it won't be ready till August, yeah.
I see.
And I will get a copy, a red line copy out to everybody with a list of all the changes, so.
And a similar situation with item B, I understand?
Correct, yeah. We're not ready again with the integration specialists. We're still meeting. We're done with the clericals. It's just a matter of them voting on theirs, but the integration specialists, we're still negotiating with them.
Can I just ask a quick question about A?
Yeah.
So if they're not voting on it until the 23rd of July, whatever the changes are that they vote on the 23rd, should they approve it, will be retro to July 1st.
That would be correct.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
And then we have items C. Item C.
Yeah, this is an annual event for any board members that are going to be working within the school district. So it's approval by the board for them to do that. We've done it last time. We did it in January with new board members coming on board and that. And now this will be the annual one unless we have the same situation with an election.
Sounds good. Any questions or concerns with that, anyone? All right, and then Member Oswald. Too quick to jump.
I'm concerned about the position listing. It says substitute teacher. Does that include if you take a para position?
That would be, yeah. It's actually any kind of income.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure it wasn't position specific according to the statute. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if can you explain that to me one more time? Does it need to have a position on there? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying it lists substitute teacher and speech coach for both of us. And if we're listed as a substitute teacher, can we be a substitute para or a substitute food worker or a substitute anybody?
I see.
Or does it have to
saying.
be a certified teaching position?
Yeah. Actually it's any income. So if we knew that's, what somebody might be wanting to do, we would add that to this, and we could do that certainly at this time.
I mean, I know that Member Lowfald has been a substitute proctor for LCA testing, and
right.
That's not a certified position and things like that. So that's why I'm wanting to. Yeah. I would rather cover all bases right now. And is there a way that we can phrase that, or do we have to list specific positions?
I'm not so sure. I think the statute only applies to income and not so much to the position that you hold within that. So, I mean, even if that's the case, maybe what we are better off doing are taking positions off. Although I maybe for the board's benefit, they might want to know that, but we can certainly do that.
I mean, I would be more comfortable if I was just listed as a substitute, just without a teacher after it. If that doesn't violate the law. That's all I would suggest.
So am I hearing the recommendation is to remove maybe the position?
I think it makes sense. I would hate for Member Oswald or Lowfald to get in trouble or get in hot water over something that's not really relevant. So I would support pulling that out. Not
a problem. We can do that.
Sounds good. And then we
have... But
maybe
just, sorry, I'm sorry, Josh.
Carry on.
Maybe let's just verify that falls in line with what policy requirements are, so that we're keeping everything above board.
Yeah, we're basing that on the state statute right now, and I'll just double check that.
Okay.
But it's, like I said, I'm 100% sure it applies more to income. All the position's going to give you is an idea of what that might be, maybe, you know, if they had said like assistant principal, you realize they're probably going to make more than.
Sure.
So.
All right, then we're looking at item D, approval of hourly wage rates for hourly employees. Last month at the regular board meeting, we pulled it because we didn't have the type of budget we'd like to have to look at to review. Are we feeling we want this on the regular board agenda coming up? Sorry?
Can you just remind us? I know that someone offered an amendment to pull this, but I thought that didn't go through, but I could very well wait. Could you just remind me?
I believe it was postponed definitely to this month. The hourly rates.
Member Sandstead pulled it off of last month's agenda, and I seconded it just to postpone it until this month because we didn't have a budget. Exactly what Member Gorham said. And I'm ready to vote on this. I have been for a while.
All right. Well, I suppose.
So just to clarify then, so with the firm that we're working with on the budget, which dollar amounts are they working off of? The old rate or the proposed rate? Or the proposed rate until we
They would
pass
be
this?
working from the rate that they are now.
Okay.
All right, then we have a couple of informational items.
Yeah, the summary of harassment complaints, this is essentially this is going to be for staff, like a teacher, student, or teacher, staff. Right now, it was a relatively calm year. There were 4. There was no punitive actions taken on any of the issues that were involved in that. And so the list is fairly nondescript. It would have, you'll see it on a sheet, but it's going to say 4. And then usually if it was teacher, student, or staff. So.
Is this list a part of the public document?
This was a request by the school board a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years, to do an annual report on it. And we kind of divided this one off. There was student on student that ends up on the educational side. Mm-hmm. And this one's more like student staff or staff that ends up on the human resources side. So Ron and I used to do it together with kind of the listing, but now you're going to see two different.
I'm just kind of thinking ahead. If it's on the agenda, you said there's going to be a list. Is it posted? Is that publicly?
Oh, yeah, there's no
information
names. I'm sorry, yeah, there's no names on the list. It'll just say, 4 incidences, 3 of them are like this, and 1 of them's like this.
Okay. Will that be posted publicly then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then we have the Parapro Assessment District Test Center update.
Well, I'm happy to announce we finally have access to our account, and on Thursday I'll be working with IT to test the computers, and hopefully we'll, by the end of the month, be ready to be a testing center. So that's where we're at.
Excellent. So you might have news for us at our school board meeting, or?
So I will know whether or not the testing of the computers in that lab was successful or not. Yep, I should have that for the school board meeting next week since we're doing it Thursday. And then I should be able to give you a timeline. I'm also meeting with Patty Fleege and a staff in her area out of Adult Basic Ed because they're going to be the ones that's going to administer the test. So having that meeting on Thursday also. So I should be able to give you an update.
Excellent, thank you. And then we always have a future item talking about the superintendent review. As I know we were looking for some more specific measurables that were going to be coming forward last month. I don't know if we're ready to report out on that or if that's still.
I believe at the agenda setting meeting it was going to the August agenda.
So then when can we expect those proposed metrics from you? So that we'll have time to review them ahead of time?
Yep.
Okay. by the August committee meeting. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That concludes, yes, superintendent.
Just wanted to take a moment to introduce Jeff Horton, our brand new assistant superintendent. What is this, third day on the job? Like that, yeah. Yeah, all right. Just making sure everyone knew who you were.
Yes, welcome. Member Trinket?
Oh, no, I was just-
Okay, that will conclude the Human
Ready to
Resources
roll.
Committee meeting and on to the Education Committee.
Business committee.
Oh, yes.
That's okay. You're just so excited for the education committee meeting tomorrow. All right, so we'll open up the business committee meeting. Welcome, Mr. Horton. We're happy to have you as a part of our district. So let's go move through the financial reports. Who is going to be reporting out on that this month? Superintendent?
I'm passing you off to Peggy.
Peggy. All right.
The financial report that you have in your packet then is related to May 31st financials. And I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has on those.
Any questions from folks? Nope. Okay. Well, we're making your job easy today. At least this part of it. Member Lafferkamp, did you have any questions on the financial report? Do you want to take a minute to open your computer? Okay. Great. Okay, let's see. Then we'll move on to the, what am I missing here? Budget revisions piece. Can we just get a general update on where we're at with the budget process, Superintendent, please?
Yes, we've started working with ARC. We've had a couple of meetings with them thus far. As I mentioned before, they're starting with the enrollment numbers. They have kind of finalized their projections. We are meeting with them tomorrow morning to go over those projections and have a little more understanding of how they arrived there and have some conversation about any special things that we see that maybe they aren't aware of. And so we should have those finalized by tomorrow after that meeting. And then they'll start building the budget from there, reviewing our expenditures and moving ahead. So things are moving along.
And do you have a projected timeline for us around when they think we might start being able to look at those numbers at the board level?
Well, the contract ends at the end of July. Mm-hmm. They hope to have that done sooner than that, but they're hesitant to say, here's where we think we'll have it, because they don't want to promise something that they're not able to deliver. So I think they'll have a better idea once they dig in a little farther.
Okay. And even though their contract runs through the end of July, are they planning on attending? Is someone from their organization going to attend like a business committee meeting to walk us through any of their processes, or if we have specific questions for them since we're paying them to do this work?
I don't believe so. I think they're working with staff, and we would then present their results.
Okay. Great. Do you feel comfortable with that? Okay. Great. Member Lafleur-Kemp?
Yeah. Will we be getting any more detailed financials around Comp Ed, the changes that we're making with Comp Ed funding?
Well, you received the allocations prior, and then each site has their continuous improvement plan that says how they plan to use their discretionary. Otherwise, you've seen how that is being allocated. That is a number that wouldn't change because that is a number that's based on figures from last year's October 15 date. So those are set, but they will be part of the overall budget.
If I could add on that, the totals that were presented back in, I believe, February, when we talked about the allocation and the 70-10-20 split, those totals are still the same as far as which school is allocated how much.
Great. Any other questions along those lines? Member Gorham?
Will those CIT plans be posted publicly somewhere so we kind of know and have some transparency about how that's going?
Yeah, similar to last year when they were presented to the school board each month, we're hoping to do something similar. Maybe look at a little different model so that it doesn't take all year to do it. But those are public documents, yeah.
Go ahead. Is their plans for how they plan to utilize the discretionary funds, is that public information as well? Or will that get all rolled up into the budget?
No, those were 2 new fields that we added to the continuous improvement plan was outcomes, how they plan to measure what they hope to accomplish, and where their funding source was.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? All right. Fundraisers. Who knew that beef sticks at Laura MacArthur would be such a lucrative market? So good on those students for putting work in. That was pretty impressive. All right. In terms of bids, RFPs, other quotes, there were none this month. So you get off, Mr. Spooner, from me asking really detailed contractual questions, at least for the month of June. Moving on to policies and regulations, new policy 103 around complaints for students, employees, parents, and other persons. Any discussion around that? Okay, you guys are making my job really easy today. All right, then going on to the website accessibility policy. Any discussion or feedback around that? I had a few pieces. One, I would recommend, or it's my feeling that changing the word parents to families would be more inclusive. And then also I'm a little bit concerned about, and maybe I just need some clarification around the first sentence in the second paragraph under general statement of policy. The superintendent/school director is directed to establish procedures whereby students, families, and members of the public may present blah blah. Can you really handle all of that, or is that? Do you need a second? Okay.
I am hoping that there wouldn't be that that many complaints regarding ADA on our website, that I wouldn't be able to handle it. And if they came to me, I could redirect as appropriate.
Okay. My next question falls under section 4, accessibility concerns. In the second paragraph, it says effective communication shall be provided as soon as possible. I think that we talked about this a little bit with regards to the overall website piece, but how are we defining effective communication?
I don't have the answer to that.
Okay. I think we might want to, because I know...
How would you like to?
Well, I think that's a discussion maybe for the group as a whole. If there are folks around how we want to ensure that what standards we would hold the administration accountable to in terms of effective communication. So I guess I'll open that up to my colleagues for some insight as well.
I don't have a comment on that. I would have to think a bit about it, but I have other things. If Member Lafleur-Kemp has something to say,
Yeah, just two questions. I'm sorry, Chair Trinka, I didn't hear, what did you say the language change you would want to have?
Changing parents to families.
Okay, and I was going to suggest parents/caregivers, so we have some options there. And then is this policy, I know it's our first reading, but is it modeled after another district's policy or?
This, I believe, is the MSBA model policy.
I did not see any kind of identification at the end like we usually have.
Yeah.
So I that's why I wasn't clear where it came from. So
I'll have the source for
yeah,
our next reading.
great, thank you.
I had one more comment too. Again, in section 4, paragraph 3, complaints should be submitted in writing via email or by completing the website compliant form. Is that process ADA compliant?
I'll have to do some research on that.
I would want to probably open it up to more modalities if people are.
Where was that again?
It's section 4, the start of the 3rd paragraph.
Okay.
Thank you. Member Oswald?
not only I was going to ask about ADA compliance, I was also going to ask if we had a website complaint form. And if we have that, can we put a link in there to it, or does that really matter? I'm not really sure, but I suppose with the new website being done, it might not be an accurate link anyway. Under section 4, in the very first paragraph, where in the middle of it, it says, may complain directly to a school administrator or the school or district webmaster. I would much prefer if we put direct contact information in there, of like at least a phone number to call, because people, my pet peeve in reading policy, when I need it, is going there and then I have to go somewhere else to figure out who the school or district webmaster is, to figure out who to contact and then find out who that is. I would much rather have it be succinct and providing at least, here's our generic number and call and ask for the webmaster. And then in the very last paragraph on that page, the very last bullet point, it says a record of each complaint and grievance made pursuant to governing board policy number blank should be maintained by the Duluth Public Schools office. Is the governing board the school board?
I can't keep up, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's on the bottom of that page, yep, under section 4, the very last bullet point.
Yes.
So can we change that from governing board to school board? And do we have another policy? I mean, I thought this was the policy.
I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
This is, Jackie's answering us.
Thanks, Jackie.
Jackie's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the yes was pertaining to, though. There must have been a question along the way. It is ADA compliant, and this is a model policy from our vendor that's doing the website, and there will be a link.
Okay.
And an online form. That doesn't answer the question about if the process is ADA compliant, but it tells us the source. And this being the first reading is a great time to do things like change governing board to school board. I would imagine they use governing board because different school districts have different models. Yeah.
do we actually have is the complaint and grievance policy that they're referring to the first policy we talked about? Or is it a different policy, or do we have a policy that fits to go in there?
We don't have an ADA website compliance policy because it was not required before now.
Is that what this refers to? Because I think it's referring to the complaint and grievance process policy.
That was my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, are you asking if the complaint process is a policy? Or
I'm asking if that policy number is going to be the complaint and grievance policy we just talked about.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, simple question.
See, I'm assuming that's why it's highlighted, so.
Okay.
But I think because 103 wasn't in place yet, they didn't put the number in.
So going back to what you said, Member Oswald, earlier about putting specific information in here, I think we could maybe say contact the district office, but I would be hesitant to put names in because if somebody were to leave, then we have to go back in and reapprove a policy because somebody left. So I think we could tease out a little bit to just call the district head office. But I would refrain from putting too many more specifics in there. Member Lafleur-Kemp?
Yeah, I second what you just said. That was one of my comments. The second is it does say the first reading is 6/19 and it should be 7/19.
With regard to language around parents, I think families is a good choice. It's consistent with another policy we worked on, I know. And then in terms of effective communication, I'm losing that spot.
It is in the, it's section 4, the second paragraph, the second line.
Okay. What we're really trying to do is provide accessible information right away. I'm not sure how to wordsmith that. But I wonder...
Accessible communication? I mean, is that what it's getting to?
I think that's what it's getting to, is accessible. If that might be the right word, I'm not sure. But
I think I would feel more comfortable with it because that's the spirit of the statement is that if something is found to be inaccessible, then we'll make it accessible. So right. It seems to me like we can just change effective to accessible. Pursuant to ADA requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or to rearrange that to be, will provide information in a form that is accessible, or, because otherwise we have inaccessible content.
Right.
Accessible.
Yes.
It just doesn't read well. We can wordsmith that a bit. And Jackie says that the process is ADA compliant.
Okay, let's start over with. So it surprises me that if part of the process for having websites be ADA compliant is also that they're reading information to you, right? So if it's because a person can't see it, why are we requiring them to respond and to send us information in writing? That doesn't seem accessible to me.
I think having the option of phone would, even if it's above and beyond, is probably the right thing to do.
I would agree.
I'd even say if they can't access it, how are they supposed to access the process for addressing that it's not accessible?
That's why I'm surprised that is somehow ADA compliant. So I think we'll maybe we can do some additional work on that piece too, on the process piece, just to ensure that folks can give us their feedback. Okay, any other discussion on this policy? We will revisit it again next month. All right, moving on to, let me just make sure I'm not missing anything here. The premium summary and comparison document. No. Yep, we're good here. So the contracts for commercial insurance, property liability, auto policies, and premium designation. Come on down.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob St. Arnold. I work with Marsh and McLennan Agency here in Duluth, and we help do risk management and safety and claims advocacy for the district, but we also help place workers' comp liability, property, auto, umbrella, cyber liability, and the professional errors and omissions insurance for the district. And I believe what was passed out to the board for you to review was a comparison of the premiums that you paid last year and what you would pay on August 1st when all of the policies renew. Basically, the premiums that don't involve workers' compensation are going up about 4.4%. So the package itself, your property and your liability, the crime, inland marine, auto, and the coverage for the vacant structures right now will be going from $401,079.04 to $419,116.93. What's encouraging, though, for the budget is that we've got a very significant drop in workers' comp premium that's offsetting that. That premium's going down $17,993. It's going down 3.3%. So if we only had that to deal with, you'd be looking at a very modest adjustment in premiums. The cyber liability premium is elevating from $20,447 to $28,635. By state statute, you now have to make the public whole if there were a breach and the employee's information or student records were inadvertently made available to the public. That cyber liability policy is going to cover the district. It's also going to make the aggrieved party whole. It's also going to, if, for example, an employee's Social Security number was sent out inadvertently, and we've had this happen with school districts where a party gets it and then falsifies a tax return. So there's just more and more creative ways that people are coming out to target public K through 12 schools with cyber liability attacks. So by statute, Minnesota now wants all districts to carry at least a $1.5 million limit. Right now you have a $1 million limit. So we had to raise the limit to actually $2 million because I can't get the carrier to do a $500,000 increment. So that's the reason for the increase in the cyber liability premium going from approximately $20,000 to $28,000.
Can I ask a question around that? I was going to ask what the cap is. What's best practice around the cap? Because, we deal with this with a lot of our clinics that $2 million isn't going to necessarily make someone whole, and it kind of could potentially put the district at an additional financially risky position. So is there some kind of consideration, or is there best practice around maybe having a secondary cyber liability insurance package, just to really make sure that we're covered, because it's a scary world out there?
Well, I know that was it the last? We haven't had cybersecurity insurance for very long. Yeah. And so we were at 1 million for that 3 years. The statute, as he said, was now $1.5 million. I would lean on Bob for advice on what that best practice is. So, Bob?
It's an evolving risk. It's an emerging risk. Mm-hmm. To say that there's a playbook on it, I wouldn't be truthful, because it's scary what's out there that the district could be exposed to. I can say with confidence, though, 99.9% of our districts are carrying at least 1.5 million or up to 2. I don't know of any districts that are insuring beyond $2 million. Knock on wood, the policy itself is set up so that if there is an inadvertent or by mistake sensitive information that gets out, you get, as part of the policy, they're going to send out up to 250,000 letters to the people. I mean, that's what the limit will provide of people that had their data breached. And then they also offer credit monitoring to anybody whose data was inadvertently sent out as well. So by virtue of the way the policy is set up, they're trying to mitigate something before it becomes a real serious issue. Otherwise, the insurance companies would simply not make money at the premiums that they're charging for this exposure. That's the best, I guess the best practices that in reference to that's what I see. Better than 95% of the districts are at least providing $1.5 million of coverage.
Well, because they have to, right? So I'm just wondering if we want to explore a secondary package. Maybe not this time around, but it's terrifying. I mean, it's, because I don't know that, and I don't have a lot of exposure to how this impacts districts. I know how it impacts healthcare industry. And $2 million, we wouldn't have just a $2 million cyber liability policy for our smaller clinics, because it's, it'll change. They'll have to close their doors. And so I just want to be really thoughtful and proactive about making sure that we're protecting ourselves. And I think it also speaks to the district that we know that this information is increasingly available, and so we're doing everything that we can to ensure that we're protecting the private data that we have.
I just have a question about that. So when you say a secondary, how would that be different than, say, raising the cap with the same insurance?
I think you could probably do that too. I just wasn't sure if, I think we could probably do that. But some insurance companies will only insure you up to a certain amount, so then you have to get a second.
Yeah, that would be the methodology. We would just ask the carrier to quote a $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, and just have to be sensitive to the budget to make sure that we're trying to stay within a number that makes sense from a budget perspective. Real quickly, too, beyond placement of the business, we partner with the district on other risk issues. Three big initiatives that we're going to focus on this next year. We've seen somewhat of an uptick in workers' compensation injuries this past year. We have a local safety and loss control person that is part of our staff here in Duluth that is going to work with Jason Barsness on helping to run the safety committee to review claim history and trends, identify lost drivers, and ensure that we've got good accident investigation procedures taking place, and then really trying to delve into the root cause of why the accident occurred. A second initiative, and this is kind of a work in progress, we'd like to try to dovetail with the district's communication with employees as they come back and they're being onboarded for that new year, to try to kind of bolt on a YouTube video, something that's going to really try to enhance the culture of safety that we're trying to really emphasize, and maybe use the district's software that you've got available to facilitate that. Because I know the time when your staff come back and you're kind of doing those in-services, those first 2 days is very precious. It might be better for us to communicate that safety message with some of the software platforms that you've got available to do employee training. And then a third item that we've identified for the safety of both staff and for students is really to get a little bit more detailed in determining where we're having slips and falls at the 15 locations where we've got students and most of the employee traffic taking place. That risk management package that our company is going to provide is valued at about $7,475. It's approximately 75 to 100 hours of our loss control person's time. You're not going to see a bill for $7,475. That is what our agency contributes towards the risk management initiative at the district. The coverages are all the same, except, like I said, we've boosted that cyber limit up to $2 million. The coverages are the same with one exception. On the vacant structures that are unoccupied, the carrier will no longer provide coverage for any of the roofs. If there's a fire, that's going to be a covered peril, but if it's any other cause of loss to the roof, there's just no coverage on the vacant structures. It's just becoming more and more difficult for us to provide, a comprehensive all-risk policy on those buildings that are unoccupied. I hope that kind of summarizes the 2018 package, and take any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thanks for a pretty complete report and kind of comparison from last year. The 3 areas that you mentioned that you're kind of focused on, you said there was an uptick in, was that an uptick in slips and falls, or was there another area there was an uptick in injuries? Yeah,
we have paraprofessionals that are getting injured when they're dealing with your high-risk students. That continues to be an area where we're going to partner with the work comp carrier. We want to do it, we want to be thoughtful when we do this. They've got a very good risk management program for de-escalating those types of violent behaviors that can happen between a student and a staff member, but we want to make sure that it dovetails with the training that you've got going on right now. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but it's a very nice resource that this work comp carrier specializes in, and I want to preview it with your department head to make sure that that it's an acceptable form of training, that we're not doing something that or suggesting that they do something that they're not already doing.
Great. Any other questions on that? Okay. Well, thank you for coming and for walking us through that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Moving on to the discussion about the agreement with the Y for Key Zone. Pardon? Oh, great.
I'm Carrie Copperwood, and I'm the school district director of the Key Zone program. As we're stepping in for Jay today, who's vacationing, I guess.
Lucky for them. Okay, I had a couple of quick questions. I know that this has been explained to us before, but I'm just asking again around the proposed budget or the projected budget piece. Can you, just for the benefit of everyone sitting around the table, remind us how the Y and the district work together around developing those projected budget?
I know that we used our budget from last year and what we made and what went out and kind of developed it from there. That's as much as I know. I don't know if Jay shared more with Bill at all.
They use projections, much like we do for the school district. They know how many students are typically in each program, and then they build their budget from there.
Okay, I probably did, I don't think I framed the question correctly, so my apologies. Can you break down for me the percentages? I'm looking at addendum 2 on page 28, where it's the 50% less the 12%. We're on page 28. The paragraph under addendum 2, projected budget. Oh.
I don't know why is it working now? Okay. At the end of the fiscal year, if we have money left over, then we split it half and half, and we've already paid the 12% administrative fee to the Y, so that would be taken off of that 50%. So wherever it is from there, we would get our part and the Y would get theirs.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Did you have something you wanted to add? Okay.
I've shared in the past that it would be my preference that there's not a big balance at the end of the year, that this isn't a big number, that the funds that are being collected are more or less enough to run the program. However, there is some carryover from one year to the next that goes to funding the following year.
Our plan is to, because we know we have extra funds, and this year we had all paying families, where in the past we've scholarshiped some families because we had the 21st Century Grant. Well, that grant is no longer, so whatever money we take in is funded by the families, and our plan is to hopefully bring in some of those families that we scholarshiped in the past, and we'd work with the school facilities and find out which kids really need that, and that's how we're going to use that extra money this coming school year.
Okay, thank you. I just had one other question on item 14 around cancellation. I think I answered my own question. So I'll go to Member Oswald.
Thank you. I had a question on addendum 2 also, in that I remember asking this last year, in that it says that the Y will get an audit of the budget and it'll be provided to the Y. And so last year we had, I know, someone that was sitting around the table had said, do we ever see those audits, and can we see them, or is there a need to see them? But we want to know I would like to know, I'm not going to say we, I would like to know as if the Y program is working as it should and above board what an audit shows. And so I would like to know if the audit is okay.
I guess the only thing I would know is that I know the person in finance here works closely with the person in finance at the Y, so they're working back and forth, but I don't know the answer to that question, and that would be something I can relay to Jay and he can get back to you on.
I know that they are audited every year. They're actually audited by the same firm that does our audit, because I sign the confirmations every year. So I'm sure we can get a copy of that audit if they don't automatically provide us with one.
Sure. Carrie, it's great to see you. Our girls were in gymnastics together years ago. Not so many years ago. Two questions. I was going to ask about scholarships, knowing we had that scholarships through the 21st Century Grant, but you answered really that. I'm hopeful that additional monies will be able to go into helping families if needed. My other question, though, was the 9 sites, they all have been full. We've had waiting lists at most of the sites, haven't we, for the Key Zone programs?
I think last year if I remember correctly, we eventually got everybody in. It's just staffing is our issue, and we need to stay within our ratio, so when we get enough staff, then we get those families in. For the upcoming school year, as far as I know, we're working closely with Congdon, but we do also have additional space at the downtown Y for kids, so we are working with those families to get them in. It's whether they want to go to the Y or not.
Right.
But other than that, we do not have any, that I'm aware of, any waiting list for this coming school year for any of the other schools.
Okay. And then just kind of a follow-up comment. You know, I've been around the district long enough to know when this program was started and my oldest daughter using it, and I think it's a wonderful partnership that we have with the Y and with introducing families who might not be familiar even with the Y and the other activities that the Y offers that they might have other scholarships for. So I guess I really, again, it's been wonderful to see the growth and the expansion and the partnership that has developed, and I, for one, as a parent, am thankful for it, and hope that we can continue to support this program. So I guess that's my last question, is there other ways that we can continue to support, or that you appreciate the way we support promoting it?
No, we do appreciate being in the schools, and everyone has been very supportive, and when we need something, we ask. If we can get it, we get it. If we can't, we can't. We know how that works. For the most part, we've been sustaining ourselves, so and that was our intention from the beginning. So, and I know the Y has offered some scholarships on their part too to families, so it's kind of been working both ways.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Just on Keyzone and serving more families, one of the things that we have been meeting and talking about is kind of a new program that we'd like to try out. It's an outdoor adventure through the Y. Some people might be aware that at Lowell we have a partnership with Positive Energy Outdoors, and they have an after-school program. That's how we modeled this new plan. So working with Harmony from the Y and their environmental education program, we're hoping to have some pilot sites that can offer outdoor adventures after school as kind of a club opportunity as part of Keyzone. We talked about perhaps having it 2 days a week, and then another day a week a site that is not a pilot site could have a one-time experience adventure, so that all of our schools can have some increased outdoor time as part of their programming. There may be a slightly higher cost for that program because it does take more staff to have kids be outdoors for extended periods of time, because you can't just have one staff member out there. So it's an exciting opportunity, one that I hope we can continue to grow, and that we'll see how many families participate and see if that's a possibility.
Great, thank you for that update. I'll just make a request now to Chair Kirby our little guy goes to Keyzone, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I think this is a little too close to home for me to vote on, because I also sit on the board of the downtown branch of the Y, so I will be abstaining from this vote. But I do want to thank you and the great team with the Y and with Keyzone for all you do for our families and the community. Member Lefferts.
Sorry, I had one more question. Do you still get feedback from the students and the families in some fashion? I know there's been lots of different ways you've done it in the past.
Yeah, we send out surveys every spring towards the end of the school year and get feedback, and then we do it again at the end of the summer. So we keep working towards that.
Thank you so much for all your years of service with us.
Thank you.
Anything else around the Keyzone renewal? Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Okay, frontline education renewal. Any discussion from folks around that? Superintendent?
I was just going to say, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This is the software that we use for our teacher and principal evaluation process. And there is special funding for that. Some.
We have had a grant in the past from MDE for teacher development, and this is part of that. And we've been carrying the balance forward every year and using a little bit of it, and we cover the software with that grant.
And do we have, thank you for that. Do we have a sense on whether or not the teachers like it?
Well, that's a good question. It is a very thorough process, and it does give us a way to gather self-evaluation feedback. It also for teachers to enter some evidence, some projects and things that they would like to have included, and then their observations go in as well, and then it's all managed from the district level. Prior to this, it was a very cumbersome green booklet. I think some of them were blue for probationary teachers, and it wasn't very connected to what people were seeing. And so I think the Danielson model is much appreciated. There have been some challenges with the software, as there often is, but I think it's better than the paper and pencil model that we were struggling with prior to the software.
I was just going to comment. I believe that as I serve as the liaison on the Quality Steering Committee with teachers, and when they were developing the teacher evaluation process, that our teachers across the district had a lot of input in, that they were involved with even choosing the software. If my memory holds right, I've been in the sun a lot this last week, so it might not be, but that's, so I think there's been a lot of support in that capacity as it was developed.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder. There was a committee that worked on the selection, and I believe we've even changed once since then due to their feedback and how that was working. So, Greg Jones is the leader of that committee.
Great. Any other discussion around that? Okay. The CITS contract extension, or MOA, I guess. Member Oswald.
I had a question about the languages. Have we offered CITS languages before, especially in German?
Yes, we do. It's German 5 and Spanish 5.
So the intermediate German 1 and intermediate German 2 would translate to what regular German classes?
I'm not sure. I just know that our language 5 is what the CITS is.
Well, that would make intermediate German 2 the 6th year that we don't have. So there's got to be something missing here. And I mostly ask from a personal perspective because my daughter is going to be taking German 3, and she would love to get some more college credit there. But I don't know how she enrolls in CITS German, or if Denfeld will even offer it.
From my Spanish days, I'm guessing it's probably all German 5, but because it's broken up into 2 semesters, that's why we see German 1201 and 1202. Member Loeffler-Kemp?
It's ringing a bell.
Oh. Pardon?
I said that's ringing a bell
Okay.
because they only have semester credits and we have year-long, and that's why it's 2.
Have we heard any concerns from counselors at any of our schools with kind of any challenges with working with UMD and the CITS students, or I guess, grading or access, or just wondered if we've ever polled the counselors who are probably kind of more of the front line to working with UMD.
I haven't heard any directly. It's usually the teacher is working with a staff member. They're paired with a staff member at the college. We have been having some conversation with different colleges because we work with more than UMD for CITS. Many school districts, it's actually their fourth year that is getting this same credit, and for us it's fifth year. And so we have had some conversation about how are other districts able to provide the fourth year, and it's because they don't offer 5 years. We're just about the only district that does offer 5 years. Most school districts do not offer the language at the middle level. They only start at the high school level, so they max out at year 4. I think that could be in our future down the road. If we opted not to provide 5 years of language and went to 4, take it out of the middle school, and then the CITS piece would go from 5 to 4.
Okay.
And I know some districts even offer it the third year.
And we work with UMD, Lake Superior College, Fond du Lac. Are those the three?
Scholastica.
And Scholastica, yeah. Okay, great. Well, you know, just as a parent that has had 3 kids graduate and be able to enter college by taking CITS classes with a number of credits, we really, I'm glad we are working with whatever school we can. So.
My question actually revolves around your last comment, because I know Lincoln Park hasn't offered German 1 for at least 3 years. So there is no German 5 at Denfeld. And there's not even a possibility of it. So, yet there's a Denfeld teacher listed here, and Miss Schwarte, I think that's how you say her name, I don't know. But, so I think that's an inequity that should be looked at.
I believe there's a German 5 class at Denfeld, but it's small.
Those would have to be not people that didn't attend Lincoln Park.
Yeah, I guess I would echo the equity piece. I know that we've heard it from a lot of parents during our board meetings as well. So I have one last question, and I notice on Addendum A the list of the CITS teachers, and how does it work in there? Are they contracted by UMD to do this work, or is it a part of their contract with the district?
It's part of their contract with the district. We have to identify the teachers because they have to meet the qualifications and be not certified, but approved by the college. They have to have a certain level of education and experience and graduate credits. And that is a conversation with all of our CITS courses, the new regulations of the Higher Learning Board and the new requirements put on CITS teachers. They have to have a plan in place to reach 18, no, they lowered it to 12 graduate credits. So that's something that we continue to work with our university partners with to prepare our teachers for when that is truly a requirement when we pass that planning deadline. So it's really in areas like physics and chemistry to ask our teachers to have 12 to 18 graduate credits in physics is quite a bit above the level that they're teaching. So it's going to be a challenge moving forward.
And do we have an idea of, and I apologize if I'm missing it in all of these, and the the documents, but do we have a comparison of what we're anticipating paying this year versus what we paid them last year? Like, is the per student fee going to change? Is it increase, decrease from our last contract?
I believe it's on page 39.
Okay.
Has 17 and 18.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions around this? All right. Moving on to general construction change orders.
As we're wrapping up construction at Rock Ridge, we learned after all costs or expenses were accounted for that we had enough funds left to complete some bituminous work at the back of the school. If you're familiar with driving in, there's a turnaround, and then you can also go to the back of the school, but that back was going to stay gravel as it had been. We did learn that we had enough funds to do that, and that work is being done, and will remain compliant with the bond sale funds that we sold for the project. So it was actually a really good thing that we accomplished the work and were able to do this additional work at this time. I don't know if there's questions on that, but it's fairly simple bituminous work, and we had funds to do it, and should be done by the end of the week.
Great, thank you. Can we get an update? I know I emailed the superintendent about this last week on where we're at with the contract with Rock Ridge.
Oh, with Rock Ridge Academy.
Yes.
Sorry. I was still in the construction project
at
Rock Ridge.
No.
Yeah, I've been in contact with Jeff Brott. I've brought Dave into the mix as well. There were some changes that they had made, and I needed to check with Dave because it had to do with janitorial services and other agreements with work being done to the building. And so we will be conferring with Dan Matty as well, just to make sure that everything is okay there. And then we should be ready to move forward. I think we're about there.
And what's the duration of the lease as it's currently proposed in the contract?
5 years.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any questions around that then? All right. Let's see. Moving on to resolutions. So, looking at the exceptions of donations, any questions there? Member Oswald?
I was just curious what kind of mill is going to be installed from Alltech at Denville and East. The second donation that's listed on the resolution sheet.
I've been working with Brad Veitz to verify that the equipment will fit and we have adequate power, but I don't have, has not yet sent the entire specification to me, so I can't tell you what they are, but I believe it's a vertical and horizontal mill and lathe, I think. I'm not sure on that.
That's a pretty pricey donation, so I greatly appreciate that. I think our students will get great use out of that stuff, and I hope we are able to fit it. I know we don't got money to build an addition, so.
Right, it'll work.
Great. Any other questions around acceptance of donations? Okay. Resolution on the authorized bank account signer. Oops. That's pretty straightforward. Okay. Let's see. Moving on to the resolution around converting voter-approved referendum authority to a board-approved referendum authority. Superintendent?
Yeah, this is here because it was postpone definitely to the July agenda. At agenda setting, there was conversation with the chair about continuing to postpone that until August. There's some sensitivity time-wise to it being around the same time as approving a referendum package, but it could certainly wait until August. Member Sandstead had said she would like to know more about the budget before moving down this road, and we won't have that because ARC will be working through this month, and so wanted to postpone it again. But that would take action once you're at the school board meeting to do that.
Okay. I think I would certainly be in support of that. I think having the chance to talk with, giving the board members a chance to talk with community members for another month would also be beneficial, and figuring out how we message how this ties with the potential for a referendum package. And I think, so I would request that we do a little bit, and I think I said this at our last meeting, but a deeper dive in terms of how we're educating the public around this and what the differences are. And so I guess I would make a informal, because we can't make decisions here, but request to the district to have you and maybe the finance team and Katie work together on developing some messaging around this and some education, because I think it's confusing, and I know that there are people who are concerned about it, but I think helping us be able to speak really well and articulately about this, as well as, promoting to the community that we're wanting to bring them along on our learning curve around how all of these pieces fit together and what exactly this would mean. So I would appreciate it if you guys could spend some time working on that, and then we could do some, because I know you have so much time right now, but we could, if we do vote next week to postpone this, that we could add that to our agenda for next month's business committee meeting. Member Gorham.
I'm just going to echo that comment.
Okay.
I agree.
Member Leffler-Kemp.
Yes, so what you're recommending is that we don't vote on this till our August board meeting?
Well, I guess that would be my preference, and it sounds like that's what Member Sandstead requested at the agenda setting meeting as well.
I guess, from working on numerous referendums in the past, while I hear the concern, I also am concerned that the citizen committee that's already formed and actively involved and ready to go has enough time to do their work as well, and that if the end of August is giving very short time to do some of the work that they need to do. So if we're going to hold off supporting this, I would frankly rather it be tied into a special meeting. We have some scheduled coming up. I really think waiting till the end of August is not also in our best interest, so we have to balance that with the concerns you have, but also balance it with the concerns of having an effective referendum campaign. From sitting on those committees in the past as a non-board member, timing and having the language is really important.
Member Oswald?
This vote doesn't have anything to do with the referendum discussions we have later this month. It's a completely separate thing, right?
Well, I would imagine they would inform one another, or this vote would inform that, but I'll let the superintendent respond.
Yeah, the language for the referendum is due, and there's been some differences in dates. The state says August 24th, the county says August 14th. I think it's more the case that the county would like to have it early, but we would have to have the referendum questions developed and to them by this time. It doesn't necessarily change the level of the package that you're asking for, but it may have an effect on how the questions are worded in the ballot. So I did talk to our legal representation from RUP, who's helping us with the language of these, and said, they can go pretty much up to the last minute to help with the language, because it could be just a matter of putting the right numbers in. But it would certainly help us along if this decision was made in tandem with or right before the acceptance of a referendum package. So, like Member Loeffler-Kemp said, we do have some committees of the whole and special board meetings planned, and it could be a part of that discussion of the whole referendum.
Well, I too, with Member Sandstead, I do believe we need to see how this fits in with our budget, and that's why I voted to postpone it at the monthly meeting last month. So if we can get that budget as soon as possible, I'd be willing to vote on it after I can look at it.
Member Gorham.
Like Member Loeffler-Kemp said, I have a lot of respect for the committee working on the referendum. However, I also do feel a responsibility to the rest of our community to bring them along and provide transparency in our decision-making process. So I'm going to keep pushing that we do provide more communication about what's on the table.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of reiterate then as any current or future special meetings are set up around other issues, that we push it sooner than later. And if it can be tied in with some of the committee meetings that are tied in different ways to information on the referendum, that we do that. And I think that's being very transparent to the community as well.
Go ahead.
I just asked the superintendent, can you review once again what this means?
Sure. The current referendum levy is $795 and some odd cents. And since the referendum was passed in 2013, there have been some legislative actions that have changed what that number means. It is still $795, but the legislature took action that made $424 of that a board-approved portion of the levy. What that means is that if you were to renew the levy, or if the levy were to expire, $424 of that would remain, and the balance of $371 would expire. The legislature then took additional action that made an option to have $300 additional dollars be board approved, which would mean a total of $724 would be what the legislature gave the board authority for. That would mean that if the levy were to expire, the $724 would remain, and it would be $71 that would expire. So passing this resolution doesn't have an effect on how much is collected or how much people are paying. What it does do is it ensures that we don't fall below that level. So if you took this action and approved the referendum authority, that would that renewal level would be renewing $71. If you did not pass it, the renewal level would be $371, and $424 would remain.
So can you, just as a continuance along those lines, can you speak to why the legislature made those changes?
Well, I think if we invited our legislators here, they'd be able to speak to it pretty eloquently. I know that the county and the city both have the authority to levy without votes, and they also recognize that the state and federal government haven't kept up with the cost of education. More and more is going to local governments to make those the balance. And we've seen that go up and down since the 60s till now. In the 70s, it reached a point where the state and federal government fell so far behind that local governments actually brought a lawsuit against the state of Minnesota and won because they weren't investing enough. Since that time, dependent muchly on who's in office where, that funding level has gone up and down. So our legislators recognize that too much is being put on local governments, and they wanted to give school districts some ability to keep the funding in place that is needed to maintain their school districts. And so these two actions that they took were a way of doing that, of giving some local control over that funding. Also, in this legislative session, a lot of work was done by our local legislators and legislators across the state to link these two pieces. Rather than having them separate pieces, if the governor had signed the bill that was on his desk, they would have been linked together, and 724 would have stayed as a legislative action. School boards would not have had to consider this because it would have already been there for them. When the bill was not signed, more school districts started to take this action because they realized it is what the legislators were moving towards and would have had in place with the governor's signature, but that didn't happen. So.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Member Lafleur.
Yeah, that was good history for folks. Are you aware of how many school districts did pass this or similar to this at their June board meetings when we did not?
I don't know how many did it at their June meeting, but I can get you a list of districts and all of their levy levels. I believe that was shared with you, but I can resend it. But I don't recall off the top of my head.
Member Gorham.
Just doing some crude math, and this represents what I'd like to be able to communicate to our community is we'd lose roughly $371 per student if we don't pass this times, 8,000 students, roughly? 85. So over $3 million we'd be losing if we didn't approve this, which is over 30 teacher positions, which does what to classroom sizes. Mm-hmm. To me, the decision's pretty easy, what we have to do, in my mind. But I want our community to understand that. I think if we don't provide that transparency, it's not going to go well.
Great. Thank you. Good discussion. Any other questions around or discussion around that topic? Okay.
I'm sorry, I just feel compelled to just say, again, the importance of moving it sooner than later so that the community isn't confused, also with when we're educating them on whatever referendum that we're going to be hopefully supporting. So I just really can't stress that enough from working on many referendum committees.
Thank you. All right. Now you're in the hot seat, Mr. Spooner.
In the hot seat again.
You got easy on the contract side today, but let's move into the approving the 10-year capital facilities plan.
Sure. Before you have the 10-year plan, and I've made some notes. So I'm going to read some notes that I think are critical and important to understanding the plan, and then once I get through these notes, or you can interrupt me if you want, we can talk about the plan itself and any questions that you might have. But in general, this plan should not be considered all-inclusive regarding the current school facility needs. The process of assessment is ongoing and annually involves the gathering of updated needs information from building administrators. We are continually striving to realize even greater accuracy relative to the planning for deferred and scheduled maintenance repair needs of our school buildings. All contents contained within are governed by Minnesota statute, section 123B.595. Projects in some cases are required by building official order or recommended with input from the following: state fire marshal, proposals from building principals and staff related to their needs, projects identified through facilities management department assessments, or identified through district administration or school board directives. The purpose of this plan is to create a comprehensive, consistent, and continuous means through which the district will identify and budget for projects required to preserve our facilities' capacity and provide functional, safe, and healthy spaces for learning. In the attached documents, FY18 actual is included for MDE reconciliation and is current as of June 26, 2018. FY19 is amended to capture updated project planning. FY20 is the project year that will be funded by action the school board takes when approving and certifying the levy this December. Subsequent years are planned projects. However, this document is fluid and those planned projects are subject to change. For further historic information, the plan before you was assembled for the most part in 2015. It contained roughly 15 years worth of projects. Since 2016, I've rewritten this plan 4 times related to the following reasons. The first modification was to rewrite the planned projects due to the use of LTFM for the rubber mulch replacement along with the renovations of Rock Ridge. This reduced the number of annual projects as well as pushed projects out in time. The second rewrite was to account for the 5-year annual $810,000 bond repayment for the Rock Ridge bonds. In 2018, I rewrote the plan to account for the $1 million salary shift for FY19, 20, and 21, funding LTFM compliant salaries to provide relief to the general fund. Please keep in mind this is only a 3-year temporary measure. Lastly, shortly before this meeting, I rewrote the plan again to add back in the 5-year $810,000 bond payment as LTFM was deemed a non-compliant funding source. The end results of these manipulations to the plan do mean that potential work considered for this building, historic Old Central High School, will need to be discussed and plans made accordingly because it's going to arrive sooner. We have a window of time where we could do this work as Hawks as scheduled if deemed necessary, but if deferred longer than indicated in this plan, it will impact school sites in future years. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Member Lefferts.
Just, what you just read to us, did we get a copy of what you read, or
No,
can we
these
get
are just cliff notes of what I put together.
Oh, okay. You just kind of said a lot of things that I would love the cliff notes from.
About half of what I wrote, half of what I said are contained in this, but the other half isn't. But I can certainly.
It was just a good summary, so that's all.
Do you want me to email these?
Yeah, would you mind?
I can email
at your
also.
convenience. At your convenience. Thank you.
So if what I heard correctly in that last part about historic Old Central High School is that, and I'm looking at the documentation around that, so if we decide that we need to move forward, or if we're going to move forward with some of the more immediate needs for this building that will impact in the very short term, what we can do across the district?
Well, here's my perspective on it. We have a relatively new district. Our school buildings we started in 08 and we ended in 13. So we have buildings that are, let's say, approaching 10 years old. It's my perspective we have about a 10-year grace period before major things start occurring with those buildings, 20 years, 30 years. If we decide that we're going to stay here, I'm just making up something, if we decide we're going to stay in this building and it's going to take us 10 years to renovate, we need to make up our mind and we need to do it, because if we wait for 10 years, this building will then be in severe need of restorative work. At the same time, 13, 14 buildings are coming due for carpet, painting, windows, maybe masonry. So that's where I'm trying to go, is that we have a window of where we could do work on this building, but we have to decide if we're going to or not. It's not a big window. I'm not sure if I explained that.
You did. Yes, thank you. Did you want to comment on that? Yep.
I do want to make a note on HOGS. It's like item 3 on the list, professional services audit. It's on page 79.
It's under FY19. It's this summer's project. We have a line item to do a architectural, mechanical, electrical audit of this building. We already have done a building envelope audit in 2015, I believe. But I don't believe it's possible for the board to make good decisions unless you have accurate information of what will it cost to renovate this building, to make it functional, to make it last for another 50 to 75 years. So we do have a line item, and I do plan, with the board's approval of this amended document, to bring on board the design professionals to give us that information to make those decisions.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one, somewhere towards the end of your statement, you talked about $560,000 not being eligible LTFM expense. Could you explain that in a little more detail?
What I had indicated was, when we sold bonds for Rockridge, we have an roughly $810,000 annual bond payment. Mm-hmm. And that was going to be funded out of LTFM, but that was deemed non-compliant. So we had $810,000 assigned to be making a bond payment, but it's not non-compliant, so now I had to add that back in. We have $810,000 more in LTFM to do projects, and the bond payment will have to come from elsewhere, and Peggy can probably explain it better than I can. But
when did we find that out? Because this is just news to me.
Well, I rewrote the plan after I learned that maybe a week ago, when Peggy informed me.
And who determined that it was ineligible? And because we made a budget based on that, and we moved forward with projects based on how we were going to pay it, and that's kind of a big deal.
I can't answer where funds can be paid from and what is eligible.
No, I'm just asking who determined that it was ineligible.
I think Peggy would have to answer that.
That was determined in consultation with MDE Finance Department staff, and looking at what's allowable in the statute versus, what can be paid out of there. And it was determined that all LTFM funds must be used on projects, and so that the bond payment can't come out of there. It needs to come out of the debt service fund. We do have a fund balance in our debt service fund that can cover that, but we will be talking to MDE this summer about adding it to our levy. As other bonds are removed from our levy, there should be some room so that there's no really up and down to the taxpayer, but we'll have to wait and see when the levy system is open how that will work.
I find that rather disturbing because we made decisions knowing how we were going to pay for it, and now we're finding out we couldn't pay for it that way, and that's a hit to our budget, and I'm not comfortable with that, and it makes me really kind of upset about it. My other question is that in your entire 10-year plan budget, it totals $44 million. We don't get anywhere near $44 million in a 10-year plan. So are you saying we're going to need to make that additional investment to make this work? Or are you, is there stuff that can be dropped off as we go along? What are you hoping for?
The plan is fluid, but I don't think the board can make good decisions unless they know what work is out there. And if the levy stays at 2 million some thousand, you're correct, we don't have enough LTFM funding to do all the projects, but I'd be doing a disservice to the school board if I only put half the projects needed at Historic Old Central and you were making decisions not knowing the full extent of what this building needs. So I've identified to the best of my ability without hiring professional services what is needed and put those in the plan for the board to be aware of what's needed.
No, I very much appreciate you laying it all on the table. It's something we need to know because we need to be respectful of this beautiful building that we're in, and we've pushed it off a long, long time. So I'm glad to know it's $44 million is an estimate, of course, and hopefully the people that you hired next year will say, "Oh, it isn't that bad," right? Right.
And this building is getting old. We have the fire alarm system in the plan for FY20. I mean, we have to have a fire alarm system, and we can't buy parts now for the system that's here. So we are updating as we go, but we haven't committed to doing a full update, and I think that needs to be a future discussion.
Well, and that was a question I did have because I saw the notice from the city of Duluth that says if it's not changed by August of this year, we could get a citation, and yet we're saying we're not going to do it for 2 years, let alone not going to have it done for next month. So how does that work?
The computer system for the city of Duluth, they come out and they always say a month. The city knows that we're not going to be doing it till next summer, but I need a citation from the city of Duluth for. You have to have a fire marshal order to do a health and safety project greater than $100,000. So to be compliant by statute and for MDE documentation, I needed that citation. I asked for it.
Well, that's good to know.
I have to have it to be able to use health and safety funding.
That makes me feel a little bit better reading that then.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Mr. Spooner, you are nothing but conscientious, I can't say the word, and thoughtful, and I'm sure put just a lot of thought as you provided us this information. One of the things I know that you did when I think David Kirby and Nora and maybe Alana, I can't remember, when you guys were new board members, is you did give a tour of the whole building to new school board members that wanted it, and that might be helpful for some of our new school board members. And you pointed out some of the areas that you referenced in the plan here, and so that might be something I'd recommend. Well, we have kind of a lull in additional meetings to do, and maybe you'd like to join us. Yeah, so just a recommendation as we're having this discussion on this building. So
sure, we can go from the lower level to the top of the tower.
Really interesting. I learned a lot.
I would love the tour. I'm definitely very concerned about our revenues and projected expenditures just to keep things going. I'm going to challenge this board. I think we need to be really proactive in thinking about how to tackle this challenge.
I think it's important to note that the levy is consistent through the 10-year plan, and that is only because Doug told me to make it consistent. I think realistically, and Peggy can help me out, it probably won't stay at that. I mean, we're not spending the recommended MDE amount. I suspect it'll rise. I hope it'll rise, but I don't know that today. But that's just a point of information.
That is discussion that we and the board have had before, that it would be increased at a small increment each year. We didn't want to put it all in one year to the level that the state was recommending, but wanted to have a gradual increase. So that is something I think we should revisit as we go forward.
I have a couple specific questions. So looking at page 81, oh, no, that's the wrong school. Sorry. Page 80, looking at Homecraft, and you're the expert here, and so I certainly don't want to micromanage, but how is that going to impact those students if we don't fix the drainage in the field for 4 more years?
I actually had a message from MDE that I don't think that project is even going to be accepted by MDE as an LTFM compliant project because it was never designed as a field in the first place. So that field, according to MDE today, maybe we can change their mind, but if you think back when we renovated Rock Ridge, we took a classroom and we put walls in it and we made it offices. You can't use LTFM to build something new if the wall behind us, the paint is falling off. LTFM is compliant to prevent further erosion of an existing facility. I can repaint the wall, but I can't divide this boardroom. I can paint every wall in the boardroom, but I can't divide it into 6 classrooms with LTFM. I can only replace like with like existing product. So if the field at Homecraft, it's a farm field, and it was made into a ball field. It was never designed as a field with drainage and everything that it takes to make a good field. And when you read the statute, MDE is correct. We can't, at Homecraft, we'd be making a field. We'd be making an investment to construct a field from a farm field, and that is not LTFM compliant dollars. And I've been trying for a year to sway their opinion to allow us to use LTFM, but I think I continue to get the answer no, and I think I got the final no today.
Okay.
Just a little bit before I arrived here.
Okay. It might be helpful for us to have a really clean breakdown of what we're able to cover under LTFM versus what might have to come out of different funding sources.
That's the only project that's in there right now that would have to come from a different, if that's the question you're asking. Everything that's in the 10-year plan is LTFM compliant, with the exception of the one project I learned of at 4 o'clock
Sure.
today.
Okay. Well, then so you've already answered my question then. My second question is specific to page, no, I can't find it. Oh, it's on page 78, the district-wide. For each year we build in the LTFM compliant in district employee salary and benefit. So my understanding that's the salaries for your, can you tell me what's covered under that?
Which page are you on?
I'm on page 78, and it's allocated $1 million each year for the LTFM compliant in district employee salary and benefit.
That was the part I talked about where we rewrote the plan to conserve general fund. We can pay for maintenance employees that do compliant LTFM work and use LTFM funds to pay their salary and benefits. And we've done a spreadsheet that we're supplementing the general fund with $1 million for 19, 20, and 21 out of LTFM. So we've pushed projects back to pay for maintenance employees and building engineers that do LTFM compliant work. And that's a budget measure that we've taken to supplement the general fund in our budget condition.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Member Lafayette?
Yeah, back to the Homecraft field. Have we had conversations in the past or future conversations with either the soccer association or the city to see if there's some kind of partnerships we could have? I know there's a huge need for soccer fields, and the association does have some money at times, and I guess just I guess wondering if there's been any conversations about partnerships either in the past or in the future, and should we start them?
There haven't been conversations that I'm aware of for the Homecroft field. I know that we've had a few for other schools. We don't have any current agreements. We do have a joint powers committee with the city, but that's the city of Duluth, and Homecroft is the city of Rice Lake. And so we haven't had any conversations about joint powers or anything with the city. We do have a partnership with Pheasants Forever for the school forest, which is just on the other side of the field, but haven't had much conversation about the field itself. I believe it's a little later on the agenda to talk about the Homecroft field specifically. Am I right about that?
I thought I saw it there too, but then when this discussion was happening, I thought I'd throw that question that I had for later now, just in case we didn't get to it. But
okay.
Yeah.
Member Oswald, did you have a comment you wanted to make earlier?
I was just going to ask the question about the Homecroft field with Melissa Jansen and stuff, but if we're going to have that later, I'll just wait.
And when you're looking at, when you're doing the fund projections, I'm assuming you're adjusting those numbers for inflation? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
They're best estimates that Carrie and I put together. We haven't hired design professionals, but we try and be conservative. We don't want to end up in a situation like we did with the Hawks parking lot, where we had $350,000 and we spent $850. So that's not good to be that way. We try and be conservative.
Member Leffler.
Yeah, just another general comment, and again, I think it was in your Cliff Notes, but we will get updates on this 10-year plan along the way as we have in the past. So kind of for new board members where this is kind of new, I recall getting pretty regular updates and greatly appreciated that, but having this document is really a tool for us as we're making other decisions throughout the year.
And as I mentioned earlier, it's a fluid document. The board could decide a project is a high priority that's in FY22 and we could move it. It doesn't mean nothing is set in stone in the plan. It's a fluid document.
Thank you, Mr. Spooner. I don't know if this is well, I guess we can push this discussion later. I have a hard time justifying almost $25 million for this building anymore, especially if that potentially means more teachers in classrooms or more technology in classrooms. So as much as it would sadden me to lose this beautiful building, especially as it's our last vestige of Central, I think that I don't know if I can say that, I don't know what I can and can't say here, but I would like us to consider as a board realizing that our priority is to the students, not to our buildings, recognizing that sometimes those go hand in hand, and that there would be some complications with the staff and the students who are already here and the community members who use this building, but I would much rather see those dollars invested in our classrooms.
I'd like to add that we have to keep in mind that it may not be 24 million. These are numbers that have been carried forward for years, and we really can't make a firm decision until we have a good audit done.
Sure. All right. Member Oswald?
And I believe this is money that has to remain in buildings. It can't go to classrooms, right? Am I correct there? So I understand your point that we probably I would like to focus on maintaining what we have that are serving the students and what we need.
Right.
Just a simple explanation of LTFM is it's deferred maintenance or to prevent the further erosion of a facility. So it's really just if a facility has something that has failed, we can replace it with LTFM. like for like. Can't build new or can't take it and use it elsewhere.
Sure. Well, it still seems like a lot of money. Or it is a lot of money. So, Superintendent?
To complicate things even more, when your levy levels are set, if you needed to levy less for LTFM, you could levy more in, say, debt service, or you could go to capital. So you could say we are going to levy more for capital and less for LTFM, and then you could get the computers that you wanted, or you could move things around. So it's not just that the same level has to continue. You can change those levels, but we do have so many deferred projects already that we don't want to get behind again. So if we could save ourselves that expense and do work elsewhere, I think that would be really wise. If we did, if there was a conversation about moving away from this building, we would still need administrative space, and we may need to spend money to create a space to move to. But that would all be conversations down the road.
And the superintendent makes a good point. Computer equipment, for example, CCTV equipment, cameras or recorders, DVRs, they're not LTFM compliant. So we have a lot of computer equipment in our buildings that are functioning today that have a end of life that will happen at some point, but they're not compliant LTFM expenses. So that's where the superintendent, I think, where we could go with that is maybe we reduce the LTFM levy and increase the capital to be able to buy items like that. Just some general information.
Thank you. That's helpful. Chair Kirby.
I know this building's on the National Historic Register. How does that impact any of this, or does it?
Well, it definitely impacts us or anybody that wants to renovate it and do construction. Everything has to be reviewed, approved. It's a difficult process.
Okay. Any other discussion around that 10-year capital facilities plan? So I'm assuming for our next, when this shows up in our board packet, that piece for Homecraft will be pulled out.
I'd actually prefer to leave it in there because I'm not 100% sure we can do it yet.
Oh, okay.
I still want to try. So I really would like, it's not, I mean, we can take it out next year. It doesn't have to come out now.
Okay. I appreciate your tenacity on that, and I'm sure those kiddos or students would as well. I know the families too. Okay, great. So moving on to expenditure contracts, page 86. Any discussion there? Okay. How about around extension or renewal contracts, page 110? Can you just remind us when we're signing these, when you're signing these contracts, they've all been approved by the board if they're above $25,000, correct? Okay. Great. No contract excitement this month? All right. I must be off my game. Revenue contracts, page 149. Any questions there? Can you just remind us and I should know this because I think, but the Little League Baseball Central District of Duluth, we have to pay them $1. Can you remind me why that works? Peggy, I think. Well, I'm trying to remember what the relationship there is.
The dollar for the baseball on the
The baseball property that we
Yeah.
own off of just past the restaurant, is it 8th?
Yeah.
The Chesterfield property.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's $1 for 5 years.
Okay.
I think, or it might be $5. I think it's $1.
And the Little League Association covers the maintenance and the,
We don't do anything to the property. They have been maintaining it since the early 80s. It's well used and groomed and kept clean, and it's a great resource for the community.
it is. I spent a lot of time there. I just couldn't remember what the dollar was for. So, Member Loeffler Kemp.
Can you remind me again why that we provide meals for Harbor City Charter International School?
It is a requirement, according to statute, that we provide. Well, actually, no, this is a contract for services. We don't usually provide meals. And I believe they are, yeah, it's made here but sent there, right? Yeah.
I believe it's because they don't have their own facilities to provide meals at their location, so they contract with our food service department to provide meals, and and then they pay for them.
And they pay us back fully, right?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting information.
Okay. Going on to the facilities update, the capital project status report. Dave is very popular today.
I don't know if there's any questions in the facilities report. There's a lot of information here, and I know one of the main topics might be the rodents, and we're having some success with the rodents, and that is ongoing, and hopefully will be resolved in the next month. We're having a difficult time fulfilling and keeping our AutoCAD technician position. So we're interviewing again this week. The move out of Barnes Wing was successful, and we've relocated the people that were in Barnes to separate areas in the district. That turned out well. Continue to meet with Minnesota Power for conservation improvement grants and opportunities. Under the capital construction, the Lakewood Roof project is almost done. We have some masonry and some sheet metal work left, and that will be wrapped up. Turned out real nice. And Rock Ridge, as I stated earlier, the bituminous is going in this week. And the Ordenius gym work will be completed in the end of July and early August. And then the rest is pretty much ongoing, typical month-to-month items with vacancies and the building operations, and the health and safety is kind of a recap of what we did last month. Emergency response and OSHA. I don't know if anybody has any questions on the facilities report.
I have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
So with regards to the furry friends at Congdon, how do we prevent this from happening in the future? Because I know that, so I believe that Marshall School dealt with this a number of years ago, which is why they ended their composting program. So it's not that I expect you guys to know absolutely everything, but do we have opportunities to learn from this so it doesn't happen in the future, both for the health and safety of our students, but also, you know, the bad press and also the costs associated with it? So how do we use this as a positive for
First of all, I want to clarify for people, I think this is probably maybe the number one question I've got in the grocery store or church or wherever people are seeing me. And I just want to be really clear that the rodents are not in the school. They're outside the school, on the site. They are not in the school. So think I lost count of how many times I've given that answer so far this summer. So I just want to be really clear that they're not in the building. I think that the practices that it's not the composting program per se, it's the procedures that are around it. It's a program that's supported by the PTA. Their pickup was every 2 weeks. So you can imagine that talking about a significant amount of waste in the span of 2 weeks when you're talking about 600 kids. And the containers that they were using were chewable, chew-throughable. I don't know what the proper term is. I think having some requirements, if schools are going to have a composting program or a PTA is going to sponsor a composting program rather, that we have some guidelines as far as pickup, as far as what containers are used and the practices around that would avoid, feeding our furry friends. But it's really not just a rat issue. We've had issues with squirrels, with raccoons, with rodents, bears. So it really is an attractor to wildlife. And so if we're going to have these programs in the future, we need to have some firm guidelines set around it. We would also request that our school neighbors, would not use our dumpsters for household garbage because that is compounding the issue as well. When we thought that the dumpsters would be empty, it turns out there was household garbage being put into our dumpsters, and so we had to take some steps to remedy that. Have they been switched out already? No.
Yes, we have lockable dumpsters now at Congdon. No, we haven't taken that step to do that at all sites, but I guess I hadn't. I've thought about it, and I think we probably should, but there may be some cost involved, and I didn't take that action yet.
Great, thank you for that. Yes, I certainly didn't mean to imply that they were in the building. That's what I've been asked at the grocery store as well. But I think it's really great that the PTA is sponsoring that, and I really appreciate all the great work that they do. But I think we need to make things less edible for our furry friends. The other question that I had was specific to Nettleton, and I think I kind of breezed over it because it's just put in as a placeholder. But where are we at with that sale?
We no longer own Nettleton. We had the closing on June 30th, 29th. So that is closed, and it's off.
Oh, sorry.
It's off the books.
Just excited.
And the Hartley property has been listed and is now marketed.
Yay,
So.
in our turn. It's good.
That's great news. Thank you for keeping that moving. Now we have more energies to put into Central High School, right, to get that sucker sold. I think Oswald, you had your light on first.
Since we didn't come across the Homecroft field again, I think this is appropriate to bring it up again. I thought it was in here too, but
It's separate than this conversation, isn't it? Or no? Did I misread that? Oh no, including. Never mind.
I don't see it anywhere. Okay. Well, anyway, we're at the bottom nearly, so I'm just bringing it up. Being that this is a challenging, or being able to pay for it with LTFM is being challenged, I think it's extremely appropriate to bring up the fact that half of the field might be able to be renovated. And I know that I have been contacted by the PTA and Ms. Jansen about did they need to bring what they're doing to the board or not, and so I don't see it on here. So what was the remedy of that conversation?
It is listed under item F.
I'm not seeing it either.
So 6F, that's where we are. It says including Homecraft Playground update, and I think Mr. Spooner was about to go there. I can say, though, that this has been an ongoing conversation. We've had some meetings with the parent group and had conversations with others. I know there's some concerns about process. And it not being a donation, I believe it's a donation because it is time and money and materials, and they are changing a school site permanently, which I believe should come before the board. We were working with them pretty clear about what we need in place to be able to do that, to make that recommendation. And we haven't seen the progress in those areas that we have to be comfortable, but I think Dave can speak to it more specifically about what things we've been looking for.
This is actually complicated, so I did make notes again. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of information, so I've got about 5 paragraphs. In summary, as Superintendent mentioned, at Homecraft we have a group of parents and volunteers who wish to perform construction on one half of the field adjacent to the school to make it more conducive and playable, as well as a drier surface. It's wet. I have met twice with the leaders for this effort, but I have no information related to the plans or specifications related to this plan. That said, I cannot recommend or provide comment on what the group actually plans to accomplish. I can, however, comment on the process. To begin, donations of time and money are always appreciated. In the past, we have used monetary donations towards purchases, and we have allowed volunteer labor to accomplish specific projects, but yet restricted this to handwork and nothing larger than a number 2 shovel, just handwork. There are specific reasons for this limitation, which I will identify next. When we perform construction on district property, no matter how small the project, we have specific criteria we follow. We have AIA agreements with both the design professional and the contractor. We have insurance documents with the design professional and, again, with the contractor. We have performance and payment bonds. These documents protect district interest, ensure we have recourse should an accident, damage, or the greater risk if the project did not function as intended and rework is needed at extra cost. My philosophy regarding how I manage construction is to do the work right the first time, do the project correctly, and have all documents in order. This practice ensures district interests are protected, as we have all legal binding documents in order prior to work commencing, and this ensures I have spent taxpayer funds in a prudent manner. This is how construction is done right. Without knowing the specific plan for the work the volunteer group wishes to do, I can't comment as stated. However, I would not recommend that any volunteer group be allowed to perform work of a substantial nature on district property unless what I have described above can be met, to include all legal documents that provide the needed protection to the district should the construction ever create damage, injury, or not be successful. If the volunteer group can satisfy the legal requirements, I feel we can proceed. That's kind of a summary of what I know on the subject.
And so my information was that Melissa Jansen was trying to get direction on the plan you needed to see. Have you had that, either one of you had that conversation with her?
No, she has not asked me for anything. I've told her I need plans and specifications, and she had indicated in an email that she wants to know if she needs board approval. And she had indicated if she did and if she got that, she would provide plans and specifications within several weeks. That's all I know.
That wasn't quite my understanding, because my understanding is that she's getting a plan, but she needs to know if she needed board approval first to get the plan or not. And so I guess that's where the answer might be is does she need board approval to start a plan? I don't know that answer. But I do know that if this is going to end up being a donation, I don't see her being the first donation ever rejected by the school board. So I would encourage some better communication between both superintendent and Mr. Spooner and this parent group on how to proceed together, because there's a significant amount of time and energy put into this, and I know they have plans in their head, and I think that we need to figure out if that can be reality or not.
Sorry, Superintendent, do you want to respond?
One of the things that we, when we met, we were pretty clear with, and that is that we believed it's a wetland, and it would need wetland delineation, and that would require an application to be filled out for that. In checking with St. Louis County, there has been no application and no delineation made, and that would be a first step as well, because that would change how the entire plan would be developed and carried out. So I would suggest that as I would continue to suggest that be a first step.
Member Lafferkamp.
I was actually on the docket to comment about something else. That's why my light was on, but I guess just to comment on this, I would put a lot of trust into the way Mr. Spooner communicates to community members on any project, and so I agree, Member Oswald, that there's good communication happening between the community group and Mr. Spooner or the superintendent, but I trust in the way I have seen Mr. Spooner handle other conversations with Homecroft and other schools and their parent groups, and that he is communicating with them. If there's more clarity, then Mr. Spooner, I suggest you do that, but I don't, as a school board member, really want to get involved at this level of where the communication is happening, just knowing it is happening, and I do have to kind of trust that it is happening appropriately, and I have no doubt it is, knowing Mr. Spooner. So,
could I just get some clarification? If it were to be, so the ifs and the delineation and the application, the plans, et cetera, but if it were to come in as a donation, would Mr. Spooner then supervise the project? Does it come in underneath the district's purview? Or how does that work with the donation policy specific to work that might be happening on our properties?
That would be our criteria, that let's say we have a parent group that wants to install a new play feature at a playground at MacArthur. We would review the plans, we would accept the donation, we would buy the equipment, and the parent group would all gather on a Saturday and they would install it under our oversight. And that's how it's gone on forever.
Okay.
And that's how, if this project were to proceed, that would be my desire, that it has to be that way, in my opinion, but I'm not sure the group sees it that way.
Okay. Chair Kirby?
Oh, thanks. Can you talk about liability? That was one thing that was unclear to me. If who's liable if something does happen or if it doesn't turn out the right way?
Well, without proper documents, we would be. If they haul in 1,000 cubic yards of fill, and this is just what if situation, and it failed, it turned into a mud hole next summer, a year from now, then you'd probably see me on TV trying to explain why we have a mud hole, and I really don't want to do that. That's what the insurance and performance and payment bonds, and that's why we have specific documents when we perform construction, because projects do fail at times. Nothing is a given that it's going to always work, and you have to have recourse to protect the district interests. So we're not paying to fix something that was done by another entity, and that's my biggest concern here, that we need to have the proper documents in place prior to any activity occurring. I'm fine with a playground feature going in without a contract. I mean, you can't do a lot of damage with a hand shovel or even a skid steer. But when you start talking hauling truckloads of fill onto our property, That's a big issue to me.
Yeah, so I guess I just reiterate that some of the things you talked about is you highlighted a number of legal documents, insurance documents, et cetera. And again, I, as a board member, need to put faith that you are working with whatever group to do it well and do it safely. And when I have received some calls from some of the parents at Homecraft, that's what I said, is that I trust in Mr. Spooner, our facility director's direction that he is giving you and giving us in terms of updates. So I guess I just reiterate that. And I would be concerned about liability, and I know how easy it is to do these projects and want to make it this fun family day with little kids, and I'd be a little nervous about that as well. And so liability should be a concern of all of us when there's projects like this. So,
Member Oswald?
I'm just curious, knowing that the far end of the field is a memorial baseball or softball field, so that would be city property on there, or do we own that whole thing with a memorial ball field at some point?
We own that whole property with the ball field, and I think it's like a Tom Robinson or Robbins memorial, and that's been there since, I think, the 90s, early 90s, but we do own that property. And I also want to clarify that in my earlier statement, I welcome donations and I appreciate the volunteer effort, but the district has hired me to look out for your best interest, and if I can't be comfortable with something and not be confident that I don't want to be sitting here a year from now and people saying, "What did you let that happen for?" I appreciate people that want to help us, but I want to make sure we do it right and get it done right and safe, and nobody gets hurt, and the district has a good product that will last. When we do construction, we build things to last 50 years, and that's the way we should do it. So
I don't want to diminish anything you just said, because I believe we need to do it, and we need to do it safely, and we do it well. I'm concerned on how we can accept donated fill, because it's not like we can go buy it and they're giving us a lump of money to go buy fill, where they're getting the fill to cover half a field. So I know there has to be some specifications made and those sorts of things. So I guess I'm getting a little tongue-tied here, but you understand what I'm saying, in that they're getting a donated product to the district, and so we have to make sure that that's a product that's usable for the content that we need. But they're also working with an architect to make a plan right now, and so I guess that's where I'm talking about the communication. I think communication's being missed in between what the parents are trying to do right now and what you have obviously not seen from them. So I know there's a plan. I know that they're talking delineation. I know there are things, but nobody's on the same page, and that's why I was suggesting that some communication actually happen. That not implying that you aren't doing the best you can right now. I think people are on different pages.
Great. Member Leffler-Kemp?
Yeah, are we done talking about Homecraft Fields, or did anyone? Because
if anyone else, no, because I've got something.
Because my comments were actually about other.
Yep.
Okay, so we're done. Homecraft.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. So I just a couple things on the rodent issue. I just want to let you know, on my neighborhood page out in Lakeside, there have been spottings out on 46th Avenue East and 52nd, and they're all wondering, are those creatures coming from Congdon? I don't know. I don't answer them. But just thank you for all you're doing. And I know you had a lot of press that you were involved with, and you did it with a lot of dignity and clarification, and appreciate, unfortunately, all the energy you had to put into that. My second question was around the building operations, and you reference filling positions due to several anticipated retirements. And so engineers and custodians, I just want an update how those hirings are coming along. Will we be seeing internal candidates moving into some of these positions? I know some of the retirements are people who have been with us for a long time. So just a quick update on that.
Well, as to your first question, I didn't really think I'd make the almost national news over rodents. So I had people calling me from Fargo and everywhere. To your second question, we do have some higher level retirements, building engineers at our secondary sites. We do have people coming up the ranks that will be able to fill those. However, I do share your concern that as we've been advertising and interviewing and hiring people in the custodial or hourly or maintenance custodian ranks, and I know it's not just facilities, it's happening in all areas, but we're not getting a lot of applications. And applicants that we do get sometimes are not bringing the skill sets forth that we do need. So I think it's going to be really challenging in the next couple of years. I think we're going to find a shortage of maintenance employees similar to other areas. I'm actually pretty worried about that.
Do you have a follow-up to that?
Just if there's any ways as a board that we can support you in making sure we have excellent trained custodians and engineers who are such an important part of our schools. Please let us know, I guess. Yeah.
Great. My question is pertaining to emergency response. I reached out to the superintendent to get an update on when we're anticipating those grant funds are going to come down. And if I'm understanding correctly, I know that you and Mr. Spooner have been working on plans and the parameters, the scoping documents will come out probably the end of this month, with them being due the end of August. So that's one piece. The two questions I have that I don't have the answer to is one, where are we at with training staff? One of the last times we talked about this, we met with the chief of police, and he was talking about the Duluth Police Department providing recommendations for how we train staff. So I'd like an update on that, please. And then also recognizing that school is going to start, believe it or not, in 7 weeks. I know, sorry. I don't think there's any students watching this, so I'm probably not popping their bubble too hard, but I'm curious what the plans are between now and when school starts to implement some of the changes that our staff and our parents have been asking for, so that in whether or not we know if we're going to get funds from the state, which hopefully we are, we're still taking aggressive steps to ensure that our schools are safe while not also making them feel like prisons. Because I've heard that's been a concern from a lot of the high school students who I've talked to about this. So I would just like an update on those two pieces, please.
Yeah, boy, when you talked about the two sides of that conversation, I've certainly received feedback from both sides as well. It kind of harkens back to when we had our initial conversations about that balance between safe and welcoming. We want to feel safe, but we also want to welcome people into our buildings. With the school safety grants, we have been working with partners, Hunt Electric, to have some estimates on some door controls in the front of the building, so that either we could lock the outside door, the office door, or the door from the office into the school. Each site has pretty unique needs depending on the design of the building. And so some of our buildings already have plans that work with that. Homecroft is one of them. They have a sliding window for the office. Denfeld is another one that they have a sliding window and the other doors are locked. Other buildings would take some adjustments to be able to do that. That's what these grants are for. Like you said, the grant information comes out in July, the applications in August. They won't be awarded until late September. One of the things that we know about the grants is that it will only fund things that haven't been done yet and don't have a funding source identified. And so we can't start any of this work until after the grants are awarded. And so we kind of have a challenging time here. So I see it in chunks of time. We have what we do in the coming weeks and what we do in the coming months. I think those are going to be different plans. We need to have a plan for when school starts, how we're going to approach this. Like I said, it's going to have to be different for each building. So we want the principals and staff and probably some parents to be involved in those discussions and how it's going to work in that building. The long term would be waiting to see if that, or the medium term, I should say, waiting to see if those grants are awarded to us, and if they are, to which buildings, if not all buildings, and then we would be able to move ahead with that plan. If we don't get an award for that building, then the short-term plan will need to stay in place until we're able to do that. That would not be LTFM expense because it's things that don't exist already, and so we would need to identify another source. There's some federal grants available that we're also looking into, but we don't have a lot of information on those right now. Talking about the enhanced lockdown plan, we've talked more with Chief Tuscan about their recommendations. We've looked more into Alice, the product Alice, knowing that it would take time, considerable time and resources to develop our own training materials and training modules and videos and such. We're giving more consideration to Alice. The police department recommends Alice because it is more of a turnkey program. The videos are there, the protocols are there, and so I have reached out to Alice. I know we received some information from Betsy West Sherman, and so I've reached out for more information directly from the company with our employee numbers, and we'll likely be going in that direction.
Thanks for that update. And I guess I didn't realize that the district was considering developing your own plan, which to me seems like a waste of time and resources because you guys aren't professionals or proficient in this. And so I would like to push you to, because the goal, we would need to do this training before the school started, right? So I would like to encourage you to really push that timeline faster. And then also make sure that as you put that plan together, it includes mental health services and support for people who go through the training, because from what Chief Tuscan shared with us, that it can be really traumatizing and triggering for people who go through the training, and so really wanting to be supportive of the mental health of our staff. So thank you.
I did want to clarify that the majority of our staff would be doing an online module, and so it is video, it is the initial training is video with questions afterwards, so people pass each module of training. We would have some staff that go, perhaps 2 or 3 staff that would go and become official trainers for Alice, which is more expense. But it is the drills that happen in the building that serve as the main training after the video module. So it's a little different than what Chief Tuscan was talking about. He was talking about the trainer training, and that's at a much deeper level than what most people would experience.
Yeah, how many lockdowns are required again? Lockdown trainings are required. Is it?
You mean lockdown drill?
Or drills, yeah.
5.
5, okay. And just as we're kind of thinking about this training and training of staff, I know last year we had a situation where a parent was there doing one of the drills and took pictures. And so can we make sure that gets addressed in whatever ways we can? If there's parent volunteers there at the time, they know what they should and should not be doing, I guess. I know we might not catch it all, but that was very concerning when I saw that and heard about that. And then my last question, back to your report, Mr. Spooner, is the last section around workman's compensation activities. We had our insurance guy here giving us an update, and he highlighted about additional training, particularly with slips and falls. And I guess I just wanted to give you an opportunity, being you report on workman's comp every month. Are there other things that you have concern about or you're supporting in terms of training of staff to build that culture of safety with our staff?
This is really a subject that Jason Varsness really runs with and works with the new assistant superintendent and the superintendent and our insurance company. And I let them, I report on it each month, but I don't really get that in-depth involved in it. I'm aware of what occurs and what happens, but as Bob St. Arnold mentioned, the most critical problem that we have are some injuries in our sites and then slips and falls. And that seems to be what's repetitive each year. And I know we are working towards resolving that.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just wanted you to have an opportunity, being it was brought up earlier in the meeting. If there was more, we should know. Yeah.
I could expand on that a little bit. I did meet with Bob as well, and we talked about that training. We talked about using our program Infinitec, which is also a kind of a video training module where you go through part and you answer questions. We talked about that perhaps being included in our onboarding as we hire people throughout the year, but also at significant times of the year. So maybe in November when we're expecting winter weather, then everybody's has to go through the reminder video of safety with ice and snow and such. Grapes continue to be an issue in our cafeteria, as do raisins and tomatoes, because they're all slippery when they get on the floor. Also, people using furniture or cupboards inappropriately as, standing on chairs, standing on desks, standing on counters, leaving things in the way where others are tripping over them. Those are all things that, with some reminders about safety and the importance of using the appropriate equipment for the appropriate job, hopefully we can make some headway with that. And there are some videos within our Infinitec, oh my gosh, that word escapes me. Infinitec library having to do with slips and falls and other safety things that we can be using with staff, or principals could use at a staff meeting. And so we'll be working on that with Jason and with Bob as well, because tomatoes are dangerous.
Except for your health, unless you're allergic. Member Oswald.
To go back to the security concerns, I know with our tech plan, it was mentioned that the 95 security cameras that we have in our schools are not going to be serviced or updated anymore. And so I'm curious if any of the safety money can be used to replace those, or how we plan to address that.
I do have estimates from technology for each building. When the directive comes out for the safety grants, I believe it might be next Monday or the Monday after. I've got it on my calendar, but we have to have estimates from a contractor. So I have estimates coming for cameras, for all that equipment. I have estimates coming for door security, and I have estimates coming for the window glass. But it will be or would be a compliant expense if we are awarded the money, if we are awarded a grant. And then if it's not adequate to do everything, then we'll have to sit down and choose what do we do with the funds that we get.
Great. Any additional discussion around that?
I just would like to clarify, Member Oswald, I didn't understand your first part of your question. You had said something about 85 cameras.
I think I was referencing, I heard it was 95 security cameras that we have in our new buildings in total, that's all. I know it's a large number.
We have almost 1,000 cameras in our districts. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, maybe that I was really underestimating then.
Yeah.
Okay. The last item is the annual summary comparison of grant and donation dollars. Any discussion around those? All right. Seeing none. Oh, go ahead.
I can just ask, in general, the chart shows that we have a reduction in our overall grant money, that we have a grant and donation money that we have received in our past year compared to the years prior to that. Is there any real explanation as to why there's been such a reduction? It's been over, I mean, from just looking at it, it's over $1 million in difference in funding through grants between last year and the year prior.
I think the most significant grant that we have lost is the 21st Century Learners Grant that we talked about earlier with Keyzone. That sunsetted, and that was a large one. And then there was one other, and I can't remember.
Was Head Start?
Head Start was a piece of it. There were reductions, but the 21st Century Learner Grant was a significant grant. That was most of that.
And so do we have people specifically out there looking for grants that we can use? I know we don't have a grant writer position, and I know that that's something that the board has hemmed and hawed about asking you to re-implement in previous years, but how do we find these large grants, and are we looking and anticipating any new ones coming up for the school year?
Actually, I've had a couple of meetings this week regarding grant opportunities. As you know, a lot of the grants have very significant requirements, and sometimes those requirements are very large. And so unless they're in alignment with where we want to go and has reasonable requirements tied to it, we don't pursue them. However, another one was the full-service community schools that sunsetted as well. That's who I was meeting with about another grant that would be $450,000 per year for 5 years, but we didn't meet all of the requirements to apply for it. So that's something that we said, well, we're going to take a year. We're going to get these couple things in place that are required, and then we'll be ready for next year's round. ADSYS was one that we applied for. Unfortunately, we're above the special ed cap, so it doesn't really benefit us all that much as much as we were hoping with the legislative changes there. But we do work with a lot of partners. The Duluth Superior Community Foundation. We work with the United Way. We work with the Y. It usually takes a collaboration of people to apply for the really big grants, and so we lean on some of our partners. We have contracted out for grant writing services when we have a large grant that we don't feel prepared to write ourselves. But mainly it's staff who are working on those.
Thank you. And just to follow that up too, I just want to clarify the 21st Century Learners that expired. It's not that we didn't qualify for it again, right? So it's not that we didn't get a renewal. Okay. Great. Well, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Spooner, for all your time tonight.